right, good morning, everybody. It's been a while, but today we're going to talk about some of the issues going on. I have a series of videos that are right now in production, going to be coming out pretty soon, and we're hoping that soon. I've been busy. It's been summertime, so I haven't had much time to do these, but we're going to be getting back into doing them with the election year coming up. But anyway, we're going to start today's topic because it's something that's in the news. It's about student loan debt. As we can see by this article here in the background, it says, here's why America's 1.5 trillion student loan crisis has spiraled out of control. I listened today to Bernie Sanders, Maxine Waters, all the Democrats talking about how they're going to erase the student loan program, how they're going to, eliminate all the student loan debt. And one thing I could say about the Democratic Party that they're consistent on is since 1865, one thing they have perfected is the ability to create a crisis and then try to redirect the blame of that crisis at somebody else and present themselves as the solution to the very problem they themselves created. Now, a lot of students out there are in the Democratic Party. They're supporting this new Socialist Democratic Party. And that gets kind of scary, but all of it kind of comes together for me because of history itself in relation to me. I remember in 1992, 93, we had issues going on then where there was being presented by the Democratic Party for possible student loan lending through federal programs and eliminating that of private lenders. I didn't agree with that back then. I was very opposed to that, as well as was the majority of independents and Republicans at the time, of which at that time I was an independent. We were very opposed to that because it kind of rang a bell with something that kind of left everybody with a bad taste in their mouth. We were kind of worried about, what would this lead to? I mean, what could it lead to? And if you look here, what I'm saying is, what it could lead to is what it led to in Germany with Hitler. And Hitler in 1921, after being released from prison, he started the Hitler Youth Groups. The main focus of the target by the Nazis was which they knew. If you read his book and you studied anything in history to try to understand the Nazi mentality so you know how to recognize it, you'll realize that one of the primary focuses of the Nazis that they knew was that if they could hijack education and take control of what is taught to the posterity of Germany, they could literally indoctrinate and raise a generation of Nazis. And that's exactly what they did. With the Hitler Youth Groups and the focus on education, Hitler promised, the same. He sounds just like Bernie Sanders today. Hitler was promising, free education, free higher education, more affordable education, better pay for the teachers, teachers unions, and because the Nazi Party was the labor Nazi union party. That's what they were. They were the labor union party, and they pretty much suckered in all the teachers and all government workers into this program that they could not see the agenda. The people involved, like the teachers and what have you, couldn't see the agenda, of which we all know if we read the history, eventually at the end result, when Hitler got what he wanted and the totalitarianism of Nazism started to take root, well, a big part of those teachers all wound up getting executed and shot because they were not needed anymore. They served their purpose for the Nazi movement. And by that point, too, when the Nazi movement actually revealed itself for what it was, well, they already had a complete generation of Nazi-indoctrinated posterity of which would become a massive Nazi army. And so, in looking at the similarities to what the Democrats were presenting back in 92 and 93, I was very scared about the program. I was even scared about the thinking of the Democratic Party. But then again, anybody who understands the truth of the Democratic Party has been in fear of them since 1865. These people have been pretty much the predominant cause of division in this nation since they've been founded. But anyway, back to student lending with the student loan program. If we were to take a look at, say, history, we'll find that, in history, it's pretty clear, where this issue starts. This issue starts in 93, 94. And interest rates by 94, 95 are up 9% 8%, heading toward 10%. 93, they actually hit 10%. And if we wonder, like, who was president, who was running the country at the time, well, there he is. That was under Bill Clinton. And this was during a time when the proposals were being hit. And I believe when I look back then, what they were doing was trying to make, they had rates so high on student lending, they were trying to push the agenda to make the private lending institutions look bad so that people would be in support of government takeover. That's how I seen it back then. And it became very scary back then, but that's the way I seen it. And then when we look here, we can see that the rates continued, like I say, at high interest rates up until the point, of 94, 95, where they were still at 9%. They were dropped a little bit to 8.1%, like 8.25%. And again, these high interest rates, as you can see, the president was Bill Clinton. Okay, so, these are on it. Now we see where George Bush comes in. On the, at the exit of Bill Clinton, rates are up again at 9%, 8.25%, the lowest. We see rates in 98, 99 start to go down. They were down to 7.46. When we get to 2001, 2002, we see them down to 5.99. When we see in 2002, 2003, they're down to 4. When we ask who was the president during those times, it was under Republican administration. So as you can see, now mind you too, what people need to understand is that in this history timeline of when we have George Bush Jr. become president, though I really don't care for George Bush Jr., I was independent at the time. I voted for him out of party loyalty to conservative values of the Republicans, but I really didn't care for the man. I thought he was stupid. But anyway, off the topic from that, unlike Democrats, I can admit to who I don't like in my party, and I face the realities of what's good in my party, what's bad in my party. I'll call people out. I'm not going to be like them and just support every insanity. George Bush Jr. was not my best pick. But anyway, he did do things, and not so much him, but the Republican establishment now having an ability to have say in matters, were able to get the rates down by 2003 to 4.6%. During the period of when Bush first came in, the Democrats, they suspended their agenda of what they were trying to do in hijacking the student loan program, because they knew under a Republican administration that was not going to happen. So they suspended it. They suspended it for 6 years. Well, in 2005 and 2006, the Democrats again started their platform for their idea of federal student lending. Well, this in 2005, 2006, of course, with Democratic push, raised the rates from 4.6. They hit a high at the end of closing in 2003, 6.8. They were back at 5.3. Going into 2006, 2007, where the program of the Democrats launched a campaign pledge to cut student loan lending rates in half. But the problem, now pay attention, that was their pitch. They said they were going to cut the student lending programs in half. Pay close attention here. Because in 2006, 2007, rates went up to 6.8%. Okay, Democrats launched campaign pledge to cut student loan interest rates in half. 2007, 2008, rates are still at 6.8%, even though they're pitching this whole thing. Okay, and then you have in 2008, 2009, they have what's called 6% for the subsidy of Stafford, 6.8% for all other loans. So they only applied the cut to Stafford loans, which are the least of loans that most of the students would be getting. So as you can see, the initiation for this, and then like I say, when we look at like who was the cause, who was the actual cause of making these programs come about, who initiated these things? Obviously, Democrats themselves are not even aware. Which we'll watch here. I just want to play this quick video of Maxine.
Thank you. Today there are more than 44 million Americans that owe this is student loan crisis. 1.56 trillion in student loan debt. Last month, this committee received testimony that last year 1 million student loan borrowers defaulted, which is on top of the 1 million borrowers who defaulted the year before. What are you guys doing to help us with this student loan debt? Who would like to answer first? Mr. Monahan, Big Bank.
We stopped making student loans in 2007 or so.
Oh, so you don't do it anymore, Mr. Corbett?
We actually did student lending in 2009.
Mr. Diamond?
When the government took over student lending in 2010 or so, we stopped doing all student lending.
Thank you. What about small business?
Well, as you can see by that, she appears to not even be aware that the government had succeeded with what the Democratic's initiation that started in 92, 93. When we hit up in 2007 and 8 and 9, they succeeded. They hijacked the student lending program. And in that hijack of the student lending program, they were able to eliminate private lending. And that really hurt. As I said in the beginning, private lending will compete, and by competing will drop rates. The student lending program that was implemented, under the Democratic program, wound up being fixed rate tied to the Treasury note, and partially used big profits. Big profits were being made, which we're going to look at some of the big profits being made. When we take a look, and I'm trying to find it here. Okay, Obama signs overhaul of student loan program. Okay, and there's other articles which I read, and I'm aware of it. I believe it was $5.4 billion. Here's the amendments that were issued by the Democratic Party, and as you can see here, the one thing, the short title of this act may be cited as is the Health Care Educational Affordability Reconciliation Act of 2010. Funny name for a program, that winds up being like here. You see in the background here, Democrats increase student loan rates to pay for health care law. So, all these students that are complaining today, and they're all part of the Democratic Party, and you're focusing blame at Donald Trump and the Republicans and the independents for this student loan crisis. You need to really stop listening to fake news. You need to really go and do some research, because what you represent, what you are now standing with, is exactly the very thing that caused the situation you're in with your student loan debt. It was the Democratic Party who has been trying, under, in my opinion, Nazi methods to take over education. And you today, you students, are believing all this crap and don't even realize that it was the Democratic parties who fashioned this whole crisis. They created this whole crisis. They caused this whole crisis. I mean, it's undisputable fact. And if today's technology is at the speed of light, nobody pays attention anymore. Nobody remembers what happened last year or 2 years ago or 3. I do. Many conservative Republicans and independents do, because we care. We remember. We know the chain of events that lead up to what causes the problems today. Okay, and that's why Donald Trump wins, because we know. And that's why, because, you have the Republicans and Democrats, and then you have the independents. I'm either independent or Republican. And I know as an independent, we are the majority swing vote, okay? And it wasn't the Russians who got Trump elected. In all honesty and truth, if you were to look back and realize the swing vote is with the independents. And the majority of all independents supported Donald Trump and went Republican, because they seen the disaster of what the Democratic Socialist Nazi Party was doing, because that's what they really are. I'm sorry, they're the Socialist Nazi Party. These people are destroying our country. They've hijacked the media. They've hijacked social media. They've hijacked education. They're indoctrinating our posterity with foreign totalitarian ideology of Islam, socialism, and communism to an extreme, and at the same time using the very issues they themselves caused to try and present themselves as a solution to those burdened by the very issues they caused. When you look at the minority communities of blacks, Hispanics, or immigrants or whatever in the poverty-stricken democratic cities across this country, they rant and rave to them about how they're going to improve, like they've been doing for the last damn near 100 years. They've been telling them they're going to fix this for them. But like I say, they're the ones who created with their New Deal. They're the ones who created these welfare project ghettos, okay, with their New Deal offer to the minorities and the immigrants who flooded in to settle for the least life would give them for doing nothing, welfare and what have you. They trapped them in these communities. They've had them there for over 100 years now almost, and these people live in miserable conditions under Democratic control, but somehow they keep electing the Democrats year in and year out, and the Democrats are in full control of these areas like Chicago, Los Angeles, Detroit, Milwaukee, I mean really Washington, D.C., areas that are just poverty-stricken, have homeless rates through the roof, mass shooting and murdering among minorities of each other, drug addiction, drug problems, drug issues, the highest rates of welfare and public government dependency, all controlled by the Democrats. But somehow it's the Republicans' fault. Yet they've been in control of these communities for decades. For decades. Republicans have no say about what goes on in there. Independents have no say about what goes on in there. But somehow it's the independent and Republican conservatives' fault what the Democrats are doing to their own communities and the people within their communities. Luckily, it appears that recently a lot of immigrants as well as minorities of all different races and colors are waking up to the reality. That little Candace Owens, she's something, I'll tell you. And I see so many other good people out there right now, great Americans. Candace Owens, I got to say, that's an all-American girl right there. She has taken the time to educate herself and become aware of the facts of truth in this country. And she is out there pushing 100% American. God bless that little girl. I'll tell you, God bless her. And she just recently got married. God bless her. I wish them both long happiness and great God blessings. But anyway, I just wanted to touch base on these things here. And then also I want to go back. We're going to look at right here. We have, like I say, you got Bernie Sanders.
He's looking at things from a different approach. I understand what the Chancellor has about. But the way I look at it is different. The way I look at it is to say that we are the richest country in the history of the world. We have seen a massive expanse in income and wealth inequality. We have seen a rapid rise in millionaires and billionaires. We have seen a situation where large multinational corporations in a given year pay not a nickel in federal taxes because they stash their money in the Cayman Islands. And what I believe, and again, this is an idea that the vast majority of the American people agree with. Nothing radical about it. We live in a competitive global economy.
Now, the reason that I had played this here with Bernie Sanders and was because if you go back and you look at 92, 93, or even, at that time when these bills were coming through for the attempted hijack back then of the education department, and then they suspend it, and then it gets started back up in 2006. By 2009, with Obama, the program is completely hijacked, as you've seen with Maxine Waters. She plays like she wasn't aware. But banks were no longer doing private lending. It was completely hijacked by the government, kind of like what the Nazis did in Germany. They hijacked it. And when you look here at Bernie Sanders, you go back, you look at the voting record. Here you got Bernie Sanders right now talking about how, he's opposed to these things, and he is the guy who is gonna fix these things. But look at the voting record. He is as well very much on board with the Democratic Party. And when you go back and you look at the voting of these higher interest rate, government takeover, hijacking of the education loan system, lending and stuff, he's somebody who voted for all that. He voted for it. So as I said, they like to create the issue and then try to present themselves as the resolve to the very issue they created. They know the issue in and out. They know the effects of the issue because they did it. They caused it. They caused it. And yet they sit and they lie on TV. They lie in these debates. They sit on the news and lie day in and day out, pointing the finger at everybody but the truth of fact of who is actually responsible. Themselves. They caused this crisis. So you students who are complaining about this, you students who are out there right now supporting the Democratic and the Democratic new socialist democratic movement, you are naive. You're not aware. You're not paying attention. You're really not. You're not paying attention. And you need to wake up. Stop with the quick text and the 5-minute retainment. Look, do your research and understand what's going on and wake up to the truth. Because if you don't, you don't. And things go wrong with what's going to happen in the future with you. You really should take a look at what happened in Nazi Germany. You should really take a look at what the browncoats did. What happened? Because in 1921, when Hitler started the youth groups, okay, by 1933, they were the Nazi army. They were indoctrinated. Their whole time of youth, they were indoctrinated. And if you listen to Hitler, he sounds just like Barney Sanders, because Barney Sanders is a socialist Nazi. I remember back in the 80s, this guy should have been banned from even coming back into this country when he went over speaking with Fidel Castro, okay, and he went to the Soviet Union and spent time with the then Soviet Union communist, okay, and came back and admitted that he advised them on how to reach the American posterity. We should have never let that man back into this country, and he definitely shouldn't have been allowed in politics because he's obviously a socialist, communist, Nazi traitor to this country, and he still exists as one today. And only a fool would listen to this man. Only a fool. You know, I'm 54 years old, but I gotta say, when I was younger, okay, I had the common sense and pride in my country. I love my country. I love America. I always will. I will die loving America. I would never disrespect a veteran. I would never disrespect Honorable LOE, okay? And you kids today are being so blinded. And then, like, even with Antifa, you know, they like with what they do here, you have now the new Socialist Democratic Party. When we look back, you know, and we talk about, like, the times of, you know, where Russia and the Soviet Union played a role in World War I, like in Russia and stuff, and then World War II with Germany, and they have different names that change to Nazis and what have you. In time, these things would get changed by name. When I was younger, Antifa was known as the skinheads. Okay? They were skinheads, and they were more blunt about what they actually were. Today, the new Antifa tries to hide it. They come out and say they're anti-fascism, that they're anti-Nazi. But in truth, they are. They are Nazi-fascists. That's what they are. They're trying to suppress other people's free speech. They won't listen to reason to anybody else. They impede on other people when they try to speak. They'll over-clagger and they make all these noise and blow their whistles and whatever. That's fascism. That's fascism. Fascism is when you suppress another person from having the ability to oppose that of what you stand for. You don't allow free debate. You don't allow free discussion. You don't allow free thinking. You control it. That's fascism. And that's what they're doing with Antifa. And you have a bunch of these young influenced posterity, young kids that are being misdirected by people like Sanders, Maxine Waters, and the majority of the Democratic Party, and leading these kids by first creating an issue where they're all overburdened with student debt. They have no ability. One, nobody would hire these kids. They're indoctrinated so bad. They don't have any skill. They have no common sense. And I mean, that's what required to take on a good job. You have to have self-accountability, common sense, and reasonable ability to rationalize reasonably. These kids have been indoctrinated to just be programmed drones. They have no future. This generation, for a majority, is going to be shot, people. They're going to be shot. They have no chance. They have no chance because they're so indoctrinated. And we allowed this. But anyway, I just wanted to bring to the attention of everybody the things that we need to consider. Controlling the university is another article here. I'll post links to these things. These articles were in relation to, you know, the Holocaust, how it happened, human behavior, how Germany focused the same way as what we see Barney Sanders and the Democratic Party doing at education, how Hitler started the 1921 youth groups to indoctrinate the posterity, which enabled him to be able to establish and grow a generation of Nazis to build his Nazi army at the time of when, all these teachers and idiots that fell for this unionized Nazi party during the span from 1921 to 1933 were all on board with it. But come around when it really hit, well, browncoats went in and started beating up the teachers and dragging them out in the streets and shooting them in the heads because now they were no longer needed. They had a complete generation of indoctrinated youth who were willing to turn on their own people and do as they were told because they were brainwashed and indoctrinated like many of the youth today are being done. Because also, too, another important thing that we have to realize when you look at what I said in 92, and I said this in 92, 93, I said this back then, I was concerned that the Democrats with their initiative to hijack the student lending program was under the same intent of what Hitler had. They knew if they had the power of the purse with these colleges, they had the ability to force these colleges to teach what they wanted them to teach. And if we look at the mindset of the college student today, we can see they did exactly what the Nazis did. They indoctrinated these students with that of foreign totalitarian ideology of like Islam, socialism, and communism in these schools. And the colleges had to go on board with it or go bankrupt because you can check and see rates at like Harvard. I've done some study on this to find out that Harvard was kind of hijacked in 2009 after Obama had taken over student lending, and he wanted Islam in the colleges. And what would happen if you did not put in an, quote, Islamic Cultural Learning Center, well, your student loans would drop dramatically by the government, and that would result in your tuitions dropping dramatically. That would result in students dropping dramatically and placing your school at very low earnings. So they had the power of the purse, and that's what they did. They did just like Germany. They had the power of the purse here over higher education, and higher education was forced into, as we see now, if you look at Harvard, they have an, quote, Islamic Cultural Teaching Center almost on every campus. And upon executing the implementation of this Islamic Cultural Center and that of like foreign ideologies, well, their student loans were being approved. You see, it's the power of the purse. They flood the school with approval on loans. They create this crisis because, too, they were making billions of dollars. The Democratic Party was making off this, and they were using that money to fund other programs. If you look into research, you're going to find that Obama used a lot of the money that was being made at incredibly high interest rates off of student loans that he was lending to mask the cost of what Obamacare would be. He was redirecting funds coming in from student lending to mask the massive expense of Obamacare. So, like, kind of subsidizing it, in a sense, of what you can see, it's actually drafted this way in the bill itself. When you look at the bill here and you look at the title, it says a short title, this act may be entitled as the Health Care and Education Affordability Reconciliation Act of 2010. So understand, this was, and again, it's kind of like what they do. They mask so much and they hide so much. And then when they do something they know is wrong or they're trying to mask something, they come out and accuse everybody else of doing exactly what they're doing, what is taught to the Nazis to do. I mean, we have history of recordings from Nazi spies that have, they kind of came over to our side to educate us about what the Nazis were doing, and we learned their methods. And that is one of their methods. It's one of their practices. That whatever you do wrong, while you're doing it, blame the other people that oppose you for doing it. Blame them, so that the focus is on them. And they see the actions of these things being done, and by the blaming, the people who are opposing what's going on, instead of blaming the actual people who are doing it, they see the effects of these things, then they see them blaming the other party. People just assume the other party's the one accountable for what's going wrong. And that's not true. That's not true. Like with the student lending debt, like I say, if you were to look back, you can see within the student lending programs that the Democrats were the ones pushing these programs, And it was the Republicans who were opposed to these programs. We even had points where they did these crazy things, and the Republicans and under even like Bush, he said at the time, they'll veto it. They'll just veto it because and that's why they gave a 6-year suspension on their initiative to try and hijack the educational program, because they knew they couldn't get it under George Bush Jr., even though he was an idiot. They couldn't get it because of the Republican establishment wasn't going to allow it. So they suspended it for 6 years. And they reinitiated it in 6 years because they expected, which they did, they wound up putting in Obama. And, in the progress of this, during the 6 years of Republican, position under George Bush Jr., well, they were in the backdrop planning this. And it's obvious they were. They were planning this the whole time because they wasted no time from the door. They initiated it. By 2009, they hijacked the complete program. They picked up right from 92, 93, right into boom. 2007 and 8, 2009, they had it. And nobody was paying attention. Nobody was paying. I remember 92, 93. I remember when they did it. I remember 90, 94, 95. I remember the bills going through, and I remember the Republicans threatening to veto it and the independents opposing it because we knew this is like Nazi Germany. This is what Hitler did. Nobody's paying attention. People need to wake up. We need to wake up. Because in all honesty and truth, though they get the majority of media attention, it's pretty clear when you look at like this Harrison girl or Barney Sanders and their Sleepy Joe, as Trump calls them, Sleepy Joe. When you look at these people and they're having their rallies, there's like 150 people. There's not like 20, 30, 40, 50,000, 100,000 people showing up like at Trump rallies. So that secures me that there's a lot of smart, awake, aware Americans. Thank God there are. But in all truth, within a group of myself or what people I know, spans out to a couple 100,000 within the groups I'm in. I know even with them and like this country, that's why I'm a 3%er. It only takes 3% of this nation, and we will make sure, but that we stay as what we're intended to be. People will stay free here in America. I don't care. I'll die believing that. I'll die in the fight of whatever civil war comes on that, fighting for my grandchildren and my children to have that freedom. You could damn well believe it. I'll be out there, and I don't care. If my life goes, my life goes. But when my body hits the ground, I guarantee it will hit the ground believing that those 3% of all those people behind me, they will succeed. That's no. They will all give me freedom or give me death. You understand? And I'm not playing this game with this government no more. I've had it, and I know hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people have had it across this country. And thank God we have an administration that's listening to the people. Donald Trump cares about the people. Donald Trump cares about America. He always has. This younger generation knows Trump from the time where they seen him on like WWE or they seen him on The Apprentice. Let me tell you, Donald Trump and his family go back way beyond that. And Donald Trump has always been a man who has stood up. I can remember when I was younger, Donald Trump running full-page ads in the newspaper disclosing issues with the government. I remember him coming on the news all the time and conversing with, back then when we had real news, not just script reader puppets that sit there and do what they're told. It's incredible, but we're going to do a video on that too in the future about how right now controlled the media is and its fakeness and how idiot it is that people would even consider listening to these people like Don Lemon and these other idiots. These aren't real journalists. These aren't even real newscasters. These are paid actors who sit there and read a script. Get real. And you can see it's a script because it's national. They're all saying the same exact thing. There's no individuality to any of it, okay? There's no originality to any of it. It's a pre-scripted script that's handed to networks across the country all on the same news network. And they're all saying the exact same thing. Which, there's a video out there that even shows that. I mean, it's very self-evident. But anyway, I just wanted to bring this to the attention of the liberal, democratic, socialist, democratic, whatever idiots you kids are today that want to fall for this scam. Look into the truth. I presented to you enough here. Okay? I challenge you. Go look in and prove me wrong. The Democrats caused this crisis. The Democrats are the ones who raised your rates. The Democrats are the ones who put you in a situation. Yet, like idiots, you're out there right now blaming people who had nothing to do with it. The Republicans opposed it. Independents opposed it. They didn't want it. You are where you are because Democrats insisted on it. Okay? And you're out there supporting the very people who did this to you, pointing fingers at people who did. And I challenge you, prove me wrong if you can. Go and do the research. Because in the end, I'm just saying, be civil about it. Wake up. Wake up. Because you're the American posterity. And you're either going to be a part of the American society in the future or you're going to be an outcast. Okay? You make that decision now as the youth of this country. Because, you are responsible for this country. There'll come a time, and the youth who are aware, they'll outcast you if you are not on board with Americanizing. Okay? Freedom, liberty, justice for all. Got it? All. No divisions, no socialism, no communism, no totalitarianism. Not in America. And that's what you're doing. You are being misled just like the children in the Hitler Youth groups to fall for this socialist agenda, socialist democracy agenda of totalitarianism and dictatorship of the communists. You're being led like puppets to your own slaughter. You better wake up. You better wake up. Because there's a mass majority more of American youth that aren't falling for it. Okay? They're not falling for it. And what you're doing today is going to destroy your own future if you don't wake up. So take the time to the posterity of this country, the youth that are blinded. Take the time. I'm challenging you now. Look at this video. Look at the evidence it has in it. I'll put links below and prove me wrong. And when you see the truth, face it. Face it. And keep digging. And keep learning. Don't believe me. Don't believe anybody. Don't believe the news. Believe what your eyes themselves see by that of your own research and do the damn research. Go out there and learn the truth yourself because you're being lied to. I'm not lying to you. You'll find that out when you look and you do your own research. I'm not lying to you. But when you do the research and you find out with student lending the truth of it, who initiated it and how it started and what the end result was to where you are now, you're going to realize who lied to you and who's been lying to you. And who's still lying to you this very day. And it's the very people you're supporting, the Democrats. That's about all I wanted to say for today. And I just wanted to make this video on that. Like I said, sorry that I haven't had the time to make a lot of videos. It's just been a very busy summer. But I am on track to having other videos in production with the election year coming. I hope everybody likes this one and enjoyed it. And, you guys can comment below. I wish everybody a great, it's the weekend right now, so I wish everybody a great weekend. God bless America. God bless our President, Donald Trump. God bless every God-loving, true American out there. And thank you to every veteran out there and every honorable LEO who defends our constitutional rights. We owe everything to you. And thank you, President Trump, for all you're doing to try and restore and make America great again. And you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job, just like you said you would. In your book, The America We Deserve, Trump is following it to the key, baby, and he's getting it done. He's getting it done like nobody's ever got it done. And he's going to continue getting it done. And America will continue to keep growing to be greater and greater. I believe that. I know many Americans believe that. And we're going to see to that. Believe me. We're going to see to it. Have a great weekend, everyone, and God bless everybody in America that loves America. And to hell with everybody who don't.